I finally finished the series Task. So let's break it down right now. In the working class suburbs of Philadelphia, an FBI agent heads a task force to put an end to a string of violent robberies led by an unsuspected family man. Task is created by Brad Ingelsby, who was known for writing Run All Night and The Lost Bus, which at the filming of this video is only a few weeks old, so Brad has been busy. He was also the creator for Mayor of Easttown, which I have seen, and I thought it was amazing, and arguably better than Task. And although Mayor isn't related to Task, it's still sort of its predecessor, and if you liked Task, then I think you will really enjoy Mayor of Easttown. But this isn't a Mayor of Easttown review, so let's get back on Task. Task was directed by Jeremiah Zagar, who did 4 episodes, and Sally Richardson Whitfield, who I'm more familiar with as an actor, but she directed 3 episodes as well. Overall, I thought the direction was really good. The tone and atmosphere felt very appropriate for the story, and there was a very consistent emotional tone. The emotional beats seemed to land as intended. It was also well paced. The scenes were allowed to breathe, but never felt like they were dragging. And the actors' performances seemed very grounded. And all of that is a straight line to direction. I also thought the scene dynamics were subtle, but purposeful. And I'm just talking about using space effectively. Blocking, staging. I thought it was subtle, but really well done. I do have 2 criticisms, even though one isn't really a true criticism. The first one is about the narrative momentum. Now, this may be more of a writing and story issue, which we will get to soon, but in episodes 6 and 7, I definitely felt like there was a little bit of an emotional overstay after the A storyline of the film had already climaxed. The second thing is, I'm not sure how bold or inventive the directing decisions were. And what I mean is, whenever I critique a director's fingerprints on a project, I ask myself a lot of questions. 2 of which are, did they elevate it or just service it? In this case, I would say they actually just serviced it. But that's exactly what I think the film needed. And that's not to take away from the directors. I'm sure they made tons of creative decisions and really got deep into it with the actors and crew. But what I'm getting at is, it's not that they didn't work hard and bring a lot to the table. It's more of, we don't need you to come in and try to make it about you and how artistic and creative you are. Just service the story and the performances. And that's exactly what it needed. And now it's probably gonna win some awards. I gotta go 5 of 5 for direction and vision. So regular viewers of this channel know that I love classic cinematography in films, and Task has just that. In particular, the cinematographer-director synergy. I would say the visual style definitely matches the director's vision for the story's themes. And the cinematography absolutely reflects the film's narrative. It's shot with a muted, naturalistic color palette, but that really captures the kind of gritty realism and melancholy that enhances the show's themes of guilt and decay. There's definitely a visual tone that does a really good job of basically mirroring the emotional heaviness of the narrative. Just like I said for direction, I think the visuals mostly just service the film. And again, I don't mean that as a negative if that's what the film needs. However, unlike direction, I think it wouldn't have hurt to take maybe a tiny bit more creative license. I can't help but think of shows like The Handmaid's Tale or even Black Rabbit, which is another series that came out around the same time as Task. Both of these shows are vastly different from Task, but all of these shows utilize long, lingering shots to give weight to silence and lets us sit in the discomfort of each character's choices. The difference is with The Handmaid's Tale and Black Rabbit, they both often utilize more unique, artistically stimulating framing, but still within the tone of any one scene. And it's not that Task doesn't do that at all. It's just very restrained. And while the cinematography does fit the film's narrative, in my opinion, it could have possibly been elevated even more. But this is obviously me picking nits, so 4 or 5 for cinematography and visuals. So the writing and storytelling for Task has been getting tons of praise, and I too agree that it is well done. I'm probably not quite as high on the storytelling aspect as some might be. I did think the writing was very strong though. The dialogue was very natural and seemed fitting to the world. I also thought the world building was really well done. It felt very lived in, like these characters had no idea we were watching them and they were truly living out their reality. I did think the characters were compelling as written, but I don't think the arcs were particularly clear. And if I'm being honest, besides Tom Brandis, Grasso was probably the closest to having a true arc in the whole series. Maybe Tom Brandis's oldest daughter too. Which brings me to the themes and messages. I did think Task was chocked full of interesting themes, chiefly guilt and redemption. There was also themes of desperation and cycles of violence. But the theme that actually stood out the most to me was faith and morality. Look, I'm gonna keep it real with y'all. A lot of times, not always, but a lot of times, when faith or politics are brought up in non-faith based or non-political films, it kind of turns me off. The biggest reason is because it's too often not tied to the plot or story. And it's just something that's talked about so the writer can give us their opinions or whatever message they personally want to convey. Task never feels like it's trying to give you its opinion on it, and it's truly a part of the story and affects the plot by way of how the characters are dealing with what they're wrestling with internally. I like that. Even if it is the writer's opinions, just make it matter to the plot and story. Tom's past as a priest turned FBI agent mattered to what was happening in his family life and how he moved through the world. The same with Grasso. His decisions were almost entirely based on what he was going through spiritually. But Task doesn't moralize. Instead, it shows us how people search for meaning in moral gray zones where the law of the land and the law of your soul constantly clash. And speaking of Grasso's decisions, that brings me to the structure, and more specifically with episode 6 and 7. So spoiler alert, I'm going to give the ending away. So if you don't want to know, scrub forward a few seconds to the next section. So I do feel like Task sort of blew its wad in episode 6 with killing Robbie. And then to continue on with Tom now on a mission to find out who was the rat in the task force was a little emotionally jarring. They did do a good job of keeping the ending interesting and putting a bow on the story, but the plot of the series is centered around Tom pursuing Robbie, who's pursuing Jason. After Robbie dies and then Jason dies, Tom's job is done. So subconsciously, we're feeling like, well, I guess that's that. What should we watch next? But then Tom starts to pursue Grasso. It just felt a little confusing. like we were starting a whole new season of the show or something. And don't get me wrong, it was still very entertaining, but I definitely had to reset my brain to get past that feeling. I also didn't love that Grasso killed Jason. Fine, let's say Robbie still dies by Jason's hands, but to me, it would have felt better, even if more heartbreaking, to have Maeve or one of the kids to kill Jason. Grasso killing him just wasn't quite satisfying. 4 or 5 for writing and storytelling. Before we get to the last 2 categories, please think about subscribing if you're enjoying this review. You don't even have to leave this video, just hit that icon, I think down there, and you're good to go. Thank you. Back to the review. Now, I'm not certain you would call this an all-star cast, but it's definitely all-star performances. It stars Mark Ruffalo as Agent Tom Brandis and Tom Pelphrey as Robbie Prendergrast. In my opinion, Mark Ruffalo has always been a good actor, and I'm not sure if he's even gotten better. He's just always seems like he's the same steady good. His character is kind of a grandma in this series, but he's also deeply flawed, and Mark does a great job in his portrayal. The same with Tom Pelphrey. Great, grounded performance of Robbie. Full of emotion, but extremely believable. Emilia Jones plays Maeve, who is Robbie's niece, and she may have been my favorite performance. Her delivery might have felt the most genuine and passionate in the whole project. She killed this role, in my opinion. You really felt for Maeve and rooted for her to have a happy ending, even though you knew that was probably impossible. And I know she had a big role in Coda, which I didn't see, but after watching her in this and Troy Kotsur in Black Rabbit, I may have to check Coda out. Emilia Jones has powerhouse potential, in my opinion, and I'm curious to see her in more projects. There's also Sylvia Dionisio, hope I said that right. There's Allison Oliver, Tuso Mbedu, Jamie McShane, Ben Lewis Doherty, who did really good as young Sam. There was also Martha Plimpton, who I thought was hilarious in this, and her character was also a good misdirection. Then there's Raul Castillo as Cliff Broward, who I can't say was the best of all the actors in this series, but might have been the most likable performance. Maybe even more than Robbie. There's Sam Keeley, who played the antagonist Jason Wilkes, Phoebe Fox, and Fabian Frankel as Anthony Grasso, who I did not expect to play such a big role in the plot or the story's emotional core, but I liked it. Although almost every character had major flaws, the majority of performances were very likable and genuine feeling. 4 or 5 for performances and characters. So to me, the execution might be what made this film so good, not the story or plot or acting or cinematography. And don't get me wrong, all of those were done well, but if we're being honest, the story and the plot are extremely simple. And I don't mean that in a bad way. That's probably why it's so good, because it's an easy watch. But what I'm saying is, the film never tries to work out the character's inner monologue. It just lets us know there is one. And they never go into the how of fixing things, or there's no lesson that's left ringing in my mind when the show ends. And I'm not saying there has to be, I'm just pointing out how simple it was, which actually goes to how well the production and direction were. Besides the emotional overstay I mentioned earlier, it's pretty rock solid. And as far as impact, I guess this is sort of a wait and see. I think if more shows start being developed that are similar to this style of production, then the impact is major. And honestly, I hope we do start seeing more shows like this. And I don't necessarily mean this type of premise. I just mean stories that are set in real situations that people can relate to and empathize with. I don't know about you, but I'm getting a little exasperated with the superhero projects or the mind-bendy Black Mirror type shows or the supernatural occultist type horror shows, or even just some of the overly stylized satires. I don't know, I guess I would just like to see real problems that are dealt with in a real human way that can resonate with things I might actually go through or can relate with. But here's hoping. 4 of 5 for execution and impact. All in all, that gives Task a score of 21, which puts it in my highest ranking, a good time at the movies. Also, don't forget to check out my movie phone videos and get a fun, different take on movie reviews, new and old. I just dropped the Sinners one a few days ago, so check that out if you get a chance. Did you see Task? What ranking would you give it? Let me hear it in the comments. If you'd like to see more of my Earnest and movie phone reviews, please subscribe for much more. Thank you for watching.